everyone, thanks for tuning in for episode 3 of my 4-episode series for the 21.5 GFRP build. In the last episode we went through, we got the shocks built, we built the CVDs, rear axles, got the car cleaned up, we were looking at kingpins and things of that nature. So in this episode here, what we're actually going to be doing is wrapping up the car. So we went back through the car, it's almost ready for the track. What we're going to do now is we got to add our electronics, we got to solder in the motor, fit the new speed control. I did have to get a brand new speed control for this car. And a huge shout out to my sponsor at Moonville Hobbies. They supplied me with my speed control for this car. So guys, thank you very much as always. Again guys, this video you'll get to check out the final build, get to see some soldering, my method of soldering, some motor wires, ESC motor wires and things of that nature. But again guys, I greatly appreciate you checking out the channel. I'd appreciate all the subscribers that I could get. Hit that bell icon so you get notified every time a new video is uploaded. And if you're wondering where the other episodes are, you may have just overlooked it. I uploaded all these at the same time. So again, it's a 4-episode series. All of them's numbered accordingly. But I hope you enjoy the wrap up here, guys. Thank you.
Alrighty, guys, and we're back here. So the car's pretty much put back together, other than some, we're going to go ahead and wrap up getting those front shocks mounted on the car. But the car's pretty much back together. All we got left to do now, considering everything we've went through and cleaned up, we know the car's got, some fresh rebuilt shocks. We know it's got a proper built rear direct drive diff in the car now. The CVDs have been cleaned up and rebuilt. All the kingpins are free, all that kind of stuff. So we know that the car is pretty much ready to go now for the benchtop setup, and we got to get our electronics and things like that mounted into the car. So what we're going to do here is, as you can see, I'm just wrapping up the getting those front shocks mounted back on, and then we're going to go ahead and start with some of those electronics. As you can see, some of these little ball cups can be a little bit of a pain, but you just got to keep working with it. But again, there I'm just feeling, how smooth everything is, and it feels, car feels good. So, but there we go. Car looks great. It's back together. My little backdrop, my backboard I was using there, looks horribly filthy now. But I started out with a white one just to try to help cover the some of the parts and things of that nature.
Welcome back, everyone. So now we're to the point that I've got my motor mounted back into the car, and I've already trimmed my ESC wires that go to the motor. I don't have a positive Dean's plug connector with me, so you're probably not going to witness me soldering that part. I got to pick one up somewhere, or I may have one laying around. I got to go through a couple boxes. But we're going to get the ESC soldered up to the motor. But I did want to show you what I did as far as my placement. And I did get this. This is a brand new speed control, Hobby Wing XR10, just stock. Got it from my sponsor at Moonville Hobbies in RC Center. But one thing I wanted to make note of is I wanted to test my placement. I want to make sure I had enough area to get my receiver, and servo is going to be mounted in here as well. So I want to make sure that there was enough room. So to do that, I went ahead and put in a battery to make sure that I had my spacing properly, and then from the motor and so on, so I can, I've got room for my other electronics, which I did that. So what we're getting ready to do now is just prep the tips. I do recommend a good soldering iron. I use the Track Power. This is the TK950. You can do it with one of those, like, I don't know, a $10, what I call a wood burning solder iron. You can do it, but a little harder. They're not made as well. Not saying that you can't use it, because you absolutely can, but it does make things a little bit harder. So getting my soldering iron up to temperature now. I'm going to dip it in flux just a little bit. Then I'm also going to coat each of my wire ends with just a little bit of flux off my fingertips as well, because you just want to promote that good solder joint. Okay, so what I'm going to do here now is prep the tips of the wires. Everybody's, soldering is one of those things, everybody's got their own method to it, and things they like to do and things they don't like to do and things of that nature. That's fine. Just like, you know, a lot of other things in this hobby, everybody's got their own way of doing something. So if you're watching this and you're going, well, I do it differently, okay, go for it. Your goal here is you just want to make sure you do get a good solid solder joint whenever you solder these wires to the motor, your battery connectors, and so on and so forth.
So we're just going to finish these off real quick and get ready to move forward with the process again of getting the ESC and the motor soldered up. But just going back and touching up a couple areas on these wires that need to be touched up is all.
So now that we got that, I'm going to slide this stuff over and try to get out a good angle so you can see how I get these motor wires on. Probably come in from this angle here, that way I can work around the camera. So I'm going to take my first one I've already verified. This is A, B, C on the motor, and the speed control is lined up the same way, A, B, C, which is blue, yellow, and orange. So what I like to do is I like to place it here and get both the sides warmed up that I'm going to be soldering in place, and then I'm going to lay it down and come in. Hold it in place for a minute. Then, like in this particular circumstance, if I feel like maybe that wasn't too good of a solder joint, which it was, but I got a little bit more wire exposed, I want to cover that up in a little bit of solder, just like that. Just like that. Okay, now the next one is yellow, which is B. Same thing. I come in, kind of get these pre-soldered a little bit. I'm going to lay it in there, then touch the top of the wire. Then you'll see it bead up. Hold it for a minute so it'll set. And there we go. I got a real good solder joint on that one, so I'm not going to worry about touching up the top of that one at all. And then C, which is the orange wire. Same thing as before. We're going to touch both sides, get them like that. And then I'm going to hit the top, get that solder to melt. And then boom, going to hold it in place for it to cool. And just like that, we got a really good solder joint on the motor from the ESC to the motor. My wires are short enough to where they're going to be kind of, you know, staying up here. I don't have to worry about zip tying them or anything. And due to most of these batteries that we have to run in this class, the battery leads generally have the batteries generally have some long battery wires as well. So I'm probably going to cut my speed control about here and then solder up a Dean's, and that way I got plenty of room, and there's still room it can move, you know. So I'm probably going to cut it here. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and do that. I want to give it a little bit more room just in case I run a different battery with a shorter one. So I'm probably going to clip it about right here, right in there. And this is just preparing for my male Dean connector that I got to attach later. So now we're good to go here. I won't have a problem with that or anything else with a potentially slightly shorter cable on. So as you can see, the car's coming along really good. We don't have a whole lot more really left to do, or a tabletop setup on it, which I'll let you see some of that. But really all that's left for the car is I've got to get my electronics, the rest of the electronics in, got to get my receiver in, the steering servo in, got to go into the remote and get it set, and then tabletop setup, and then the car's ready for some testing and tuning.
Alrighty, guys, we're getting closer with every step. We got the ESC in, motors back in, you know, everything's soldered up, ready to go. So it's time to get those other electronics in. We got to get the receiver in, the steering servo in, and we got to worry about our placement for a couple other things. You know, like I mentioned earlier in the video, I got the battery in there so I could figure out how far I need to offset my speed control, things of that nature. Same rule applies for the receiver as well. And the steering servo, I pretty much already knew how it was going to be mounted. I'm mounting it back in the same way that it was whenever I took it off. That's a popular mounting way for this particular brand car. There I have seen, you know, servos mounted you know, a couple different ways, not only on these cars but other manufacturers. But this that is a popular way to mount them in these cars with that location and that way. So that's the reason I'm going to go ahead and put it back the same way it was before. So we got it back down. I didn't cinch everything down yet because I've got to go through and I got to adjust the upper portions right there where you see I'm going to right now. I noticed those were a little loose too. So I'm going to tighten those up. And once those are torqued down, then I'm going to go down and finish torquing in the bottom. Just like that. So now we know that the servo's in there good. We're going to bring it back down. Now we're going to go ahead and put that ball cup on. And now we got our entire steering set up, you know, is ready to go again. Everything's back in place. Good to go. There we go. All right, so from here, now we got to finish, you know, mounting in the other electronics. We're going to go to that receiver now. And I've already got some double-sided tape, servo tape, whatever you need to use, you know. They actually sell some stuff that is meant for RC, that is called servo tape. There's other manufacturers out there that make other kind of double-sided sticky tapes that are just as good, if not better. In my toolbox, I've got some like real servo tape. Then I've got some like, I don't know, like double-sided Gorilla tape. But what I always do is whenever I apply it, I always, you know, hold it to that area that I'm going to make sure that it has a good, you know, it actually does hold well in that place. Hold it down, let it sit for a minute, then wiggle it. If it's coming off, the hold's not going to be good. It should hold just fine. So, like right here, we got to figure out, all right, which direction do we want to mount it? We want it, you know, long ways, width-wise, whatever. You know, how do we want to mount this? So I'm going to mount it just like that. I'm going to get it on that little area. There you go. You can see me getting it, kind of seating it. Then we're good to go. And what I have here is, since this, that receiver still has an antenna, one of my receivers does not. What I'm going to do is I pulled out of my toolbox. I had an old leftover antenna holder. Is all that is. So I'm just going to back that little mounting screw out. We're going to mount that antenna holder in one of those little slots that's already there in the chassis. So going to run my antenna through it, run it down. Then I've got like a green tube receiver antenna tube that I'm going to slide on over it too. There's different ways you can do this. I've seen guys like take a clear piece of Lexan, drill holes in it, do like a almost like a shoelace effect with the antenna wire to keep it low profile and out of the way. I've personally used that method on some of my cars as well. But the car that I pulled this receiver out of had this antenna tube holder and all that stuff already on it. Or excuse me, no, had the antenna tube but did not have the holder. That holder again was a spare part I had in my toolbox. So as you can see, I'm just going to go ahead and tighten her down here. So that's the area that we're going to go with mounting, out of the way of everything else, because you don't want to put that thing. You don't want the antenna wire to get caught up in any of the chassis moving points or in the servo or anything like that. It's always good if your receiver does have an antenna to go ahead and mount it somewhere safely where that antenna can be held safe. But so we're good to go. So now what I'm going to do here is, this is that old servo's got a very, very long wire to it. I'm not exactly sure what the servo was originally made for, but it's got the specs on it are good as far as speed and it being metal geared and you know, high. I think it's high torque too, if I remember correctly. But it's fast, high torque, metal geared. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take those wires there and I'm going to roll it down on one of my wrenches. I was getting some tangling out of it, as you can see. Just going to roll it down, keep going, giving it that pigtail effect, because what that's going to do, going to take that long cord and make it short like that, and it will hold its shape. Those wires in there will help it hold its shape like that. Sometimes what you have to do with some of these cars is take a little small zip tie and kind of secure them in areas to help hold it too, because you don't want those wires dragging on the track, because you could drag through the wire. You know, it could lose power, it could short out. I mean, there's ever so many number of things that could happen. So you want to make sure your wires are always, you know, put somewhere safe and accounted for. You know, anything around the speed control, you don't want any wires that could wind up getting trapped in that cooling fan, things of that nature. So we're going to go ahead and roll that wire up as well, do the same thing. Then I'm going to get these things plugged into the receiver here shortly, but what we're going to also do is get that switch. There's a power switch for the speed control we've got to mount. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and roll that cord as well. That other black cord you saw my hand on right there that I'm tucking, that is a wire that leads to a motor fan that's actually currently mounted in the car. I may end up using it later. I may not. I may take it out. I don't know. I don't really know that 21.5 really even needs it. But, so it'd be something good to have. So what I'm doing right there is on the bottom of that power switch, I'm taking my knife and just scoring the bottom a little bit. I'm giving it a little area, you know, for the tape to kind of bite into and help, you know, help it hold. I do that whenever the plastic, you know, is, you know, smooth and it's just one of those things that I've always personally done. You don't have to do it. I know people that don't. They just stick it straight in there. Don't worry about it. But it was an old trick that someone showed me years ago, and I've just carried it on the way I do it too. I usually do it on the bottom of my speed control and my receivers too, scratching up just a little bit. But there we go. Everything is mounted now. So now we got to hook up the speed control and the steering servo into the receiver. And once we have that done, you know, we are just about ready to go run some power to it. And also, too, as you noticed there, I think I may have mentioned it earlier in the video, but I have the power wires for the ESC cut. They were really long. I cut them shorter because most of the batteries I'm going to run with this car generally has longer battery leads already on them. And I did not currently have a Dean's connector to solder into place. So I just want to elaborate on that again as well, too. But everything's in place again now. So now we are pretty much ready to... we just got to get that Dean's connector soldered on to those wires. And I think we'll be ready to turn the radio on, turn the car on, and get everything kind of programmed and set and things of that nature. So we're nearing the complete, you know, we're nearing the finish mark. So that's always a good thing.
All right, guys. So we're pretty much got everything set where it needs to be now. I did go through, like I talked about earlier, I got my Dean's plug soldered on to the speed control. The only other things that I did that you didn't see me do was I mounted my track transponder, got the motor mesh set and all that kind of good stuff. So it's ready to go. So we're going to power this thing up. And, you know, I did go through and set everything because that was a process. I had to go back through the manual to be able to remember. I'm not really going to do that here. If you guys would like to see me do some of the programming and the setup on the Hobbywing ESC, let me know in the comment section below. The only reason I'm not too worried about showing it right now in this particular video is I don't know what ESC guys are running, and each one could be a little bit different. But just to see, here's my transmitter. Gonna turn it on first, turn on the car. Car power's on, gonna check my throttle. Throttle's there. Check my steering, left, right. So everything's as it should. So we have a race car that is ready for a tabletop setup. And if you're asking what I mean by tabletop setup, I'll be glad to go over that with you real quick. What that means, what tabletop setup is I'm going to put the car on a very flat and perfect surface. I'll get rid of the towel you see here and just get it on the tabletop. Gonna check set my springs. And that's another thing too. I'm not gonna really go over springs because these springs I'm actually gonna end up changing out. And the reason being is I don't even know what I'm gonna run yet. I'm probably just gonna go ahead and set a baseline setup on this car. Probably right off the GFRP team website just to get a baseline setup, and I'll tune for me from there. And I forgot what that setup was, but I think it's going to be something like black springs in the back and maybe grays up front. The weights, I can't remember. I'd already looked at the setup once. But with the benchtop setup, I'm going to put my springs on that I want to from that baseline setup. I'm going to set the camber. I've already set the toe. I'm going to adjust the camber and adjust the ride height to get that baseline set up. And then I'm not going to touch the car anymore until track day. Because at that point, I'll prep my tires, get the car on the track, cut several laps, see how the car's doing, or maybe just a few laps, and then have to tune from there. So that's what I mean whenever I say baseline setup. And another thing I do want to show is this topic comes up a lot, and I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people at the track strip a gear. Okay, strip their spur gear. If you go in, and I'm not too sure how clear this is going to come out, but I hope it's good. But I set my mesh to the point where if I hold one of these still, I'm going to try to hold that down. I'm going to try to hold my pinion still. I'm going to take that spur, and I should be able to wiggle just a little bit. See how there's that little bit of play in that spur? And I'm hoping you can get a good visual of that mesh. So you want just a little bit of play. You never ever want to just slide that motor and right into the gear and just have that. That's way too tight, way too much friction. And another trick you can always do is the old paper trick. So I just ripped off an old piece of the paper manual there from the ESC. But I'm going to run that paper here, and then I'm going to spin that gear, pull that paper in, just like so. If you go back and look at the paper, and it's got, you can see the teeth in it, but the paper hasn't really ripped or torn, but you can see the tracks of it, you're good to go. That's one of the old school methods. I don't really use that. I just do it by hand. And again, let's try it from a different angle here. What I like to do is I'll hold one gear in place and make sure I got just a little bit of play. You can kind of see that tire rocking right here too. Maybe if I pull that back just a hair, like so. And I'm going to wiggle that. I'm holding the pinion still, wiggling the spur. There's just a little bit of play. You can see that little bit of wheel, wiggle. But then whenever you go in here and actually look at the gear, you can see the teeth and everything are lining up really good. So that is a major focal point, and I don't care what RC car you're running. I don't care if you're working on a purpose-built race car like this one, or if you're working on like a basher or something. The only other thing that I can recall that I mounted off the video was also my sensor wire for the motor to the ESC. But other than that, I've walked you guys have gotten to walk through the whole build process with me here. Like I said earlier in the video, during the teardown and cleanup, and whenever I was checking for, all of my kingpins and all of my arms moving freely and all that stuff, there's some things I didn't open up, which, we talked about and showed in the video. Like I didn't pull the front kingpins or rear kingpins out. And again, I just want to elaborate. That was because of two reasons. One, they were fine. Everything moved great. Could those kingpins use some polishing? Absolutely. They always can. But one reason why I was not too worried about that is I plan on getting some brand new ones anyway. For the simple fact of, I don't know how many times the current ones already installed in this car have been polished, because polishing them is a good thing, but over time you will remove enough material that there is a little bit of play and slop. So I do plan on getting a brand new kingpin set. So since everything was moving freely, I wasn't going to tear it down to polish those again right now. I'm just going to start with a fresh new set once I'm able to get those. But I hope you guys enjoyed this build. Another video I do plan to do is a test night. I plan to take this car to an indoor track, a track that has not been seen on the channel yet. Plan on taking it to Little Indy in Spartanburg, and going to be doing some testing and tuning with the car there. It will be a race night whenever I go, but I'm not worried about racing in the video. I'm going to go out there. I just want to put the car on the track, get some practice in. I'm sure I'll still race or run in the heats, but I'll probably automatically just put my car in the back of the field, especially if the car needs work, so I can tune on it throughout the night. So this, whenever I take this one for the first time, I'm not worried about racing it. I just want to get it, fine-tuned for me and for me in that track. But again, guys, I hope you enjoyed the build. I did get the body. That is one more thing I did want to show you. I did get the body trimmed out too. That was the other thing I did off camera. I already showed you guys the painted and finished body, but I did get it trimmed out, so the body's ready to go too.